We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation led by Councilmember Ferris.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord, we ask that you grant us strength and courage to love and serve you as we deliberate tonight, and the wisdom of your will. And we also ask that you aid our community. In your Son's name we ask, amen.
Amen.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Clark.
I would like to amend the agenda and add on to the consent agenda an item C, which is a request from the Andy Minshall Heather Allen Memorial Leukemia Fund, a.k.a. the Legal Freaks, for a street closure for this coming Sunday.
Second.
The motion's been made to amend the consent agenda to include as item C an annual event that's held every year, the Andy Minshall Heather Allen Memorial Leukemia Fund, a.k.a. known as the Leuko Freaks. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of amending the consent agenda to include a new item C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is announcements. Is there any council member announcements? Hearing none, we'll move to item 5 on the agenda, people from the floor.
I know.
Item 5 on the agenda, people from the floor. Anybody wish to speak? Mr. Carmichael, please state your name for the record and your address, and we'll give you approximately 3 minutes.
My name is Jack Carmichael. I live at 519 South Rogers Street. You probably recall that I spent 18 years working internationally on environmental problems as a representative of the American government and 5 years working on matters of national security. I want to state that no action has been taken so far by the Council on my interventions dealing with environmental aspects of the West Bay proposal to drill for oil under Mason. In this connection, let me invite all of you to attend the Mason Town Forum on oil and gas drilling and leasing issues scheduled for July 28th at the Mason Historical Society from 5:30 to 7:30. I will speak on economics of the West Bay proposal. With Michigan Oil having a high sulfur content, it now sells for about $32 a barrel at the wellhead. In the offer that West Bay has made to me, I would receive about 2 cents a barrel for their oil. West Bay would receive 1,400 times that. Assuming a production from the West Bay internet site equal to the average West Bay well now operating in Michigan, my royalty would be about 35 cents a day. In my opinion, it's time to revoke the peddler's license. Details of these calculations will be presented and will be available for all of you at that meeting on the 28th. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to address the council this evening? Item 6, presentations. I don't believe we have any. Is anybody aware of any presentations? So, item 7 is the consent agenda as amended to include item C.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Grosha.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
I second the motion.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended to include item C. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 7-0. The consent agenda is approved. Item 8, regular business. Letter A is the second reading of the fire code ordinance, which we had the first reading at the last council meeting. Mr. Price, would you care to make any introductory comments regarding this?
Well, Mayor, the first reading, as you mentioned, was made the last council meeting. This only basically states that it is a misdemeanor punishable by with penalties for anybody calling in a false alarm involving police, fire, or ambulance. The for the council this evening is to give it a second reading, followed by a motion to approve, and then it must be published in a newspaper of general circulation within the city of Mason, at which time the ordinance, not until it is published in full. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to consider the fire code ordinance read for the second time and adopted.
Second.
Motion's been made to consider the fire code ordinance read for the second time and adopted. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Item B is a motion to authorize the acting city administrator to proceed in the purchase of a new street sweeper. Again, I would invite you to preface this and the information that you have uncovered and determines that you've swept up so far.
Yes, Mayor. I brought this to the council's attention because one of the most fundamental services that a city provides to its public, to its citizens, to its residents is street cleaning. Right now, we have a street sweeper that can do the job. However, it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to complete the entire city of Mason. That is unacceptable. The unit is a Temco, I believe was 1997, if I recall correctly. It was before I left, and I left in 99. Mr. Bruno, do you remember the exact year? Was it 97 or 98? Or?
I'd go for 98.
Okay, 98. It's outlived its usefulness. We can't afford to take a person, a worker, and dedicate that much time for street sweeping. Yet, street sweeping must be done, so we have a dilemma. And one way to correct it is to be able to do this, what I believe can be done in less than 2 weeks, and allow us to be able to use our personnel for other activities than just spending all day and every day on a street sweeper. The street sweeping is not just aesthetics, but it also limits the amount of trash that is sent down our catch basins. We like to think that in the spring we can do it. Once we start in the spring, and I mean the spring, not July when it started this year, but in the spring, we can do it every 60 days for the general public, for all the streets in the city of Mason, in the downtown business district. And the only way that can happen is if we have to replace our sweeper.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Councilmember Grocha.
I move to authorize the acting city administrator to proceed in purchasing the new street sweeper for the city, including financing of said sweeper.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to authorize the city administrator to proceed in purchasing a new street sweeper for the city. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Price, for bringing this to our attention. I think I agree with you, it's something, it's an area that certainly needs to be addressed. My question is, though, in your last comment in your memorandum to us, will you say in the near future you'll be discussing the purpose of a motor vehicle pool fund and changes that be made to that? For my own satisfaction, to address an issue that's near and dear to my heart, will this also spell out how we will finance fire trucks in the future? Because this expenditure would go a long ways to helping us pay for another fire truck, and I'm not sure which is older, the fire trucks or the street sweeper.
The answer to that is yes and no. When I left in 1999, the Motor Vehicle Pool Fund was actually lending money to the fire department to purchase their vehicles. That can't be done today. I want to get it back to a point where we can do that. But as far as leasing, because all the other equipment is rented. We don't rent our fire trucks because it just doesn't work that way. We don't go by miles or hours or anything else. So we really can't work it out to do our fire trucks. But we have to address that issue. There's no question. But it won't be through the Motor Vehicle Pool Fund. It may be to a point where we're in a position to lend money, to borrow it cheaply, to buy it cheaply, and I would hope we would be able to do that in the next, and it will take probably anywhere from 6 to 8 years to get the Motor Vehicle Pool Fund in that healthy of a position. It is not something that can be done overnight, but it has to start. And that's what I'm referring to, is that let's get started so that in 6, 7 years, we don't have to have rusty equipment and we're not replacing it, but once every 8 or 9 years when it should be replaced every 3 years. We have to fix it.
Thank you for that. As long as we're going to be addressing that either directly or indirectly, I would be more inclined to support your request.
Councilmember Ferris.
I have some misgivings about this only because this is not a budgeted expense. I would be more willing to go along with this if we put it on the council list of requested items that we were looking at in addition to the budget and graded it and put it into next year's budget as a priority. I think that this is not necessarily the best use of our money at this time. I want it to go in the budget. Thank you.
My only response to that is that this is an enterprise fund. We have sufficient monies. When you get into these kinds of issues such as equipment, it's not unusual to do equipment in the course of a year, emergencies or otherwise, and that we have sufficient funds for this year, and it won't make much difference next year because we'll have the same amount of surplus going forward. If you follow what I'm saying, we have at the end of this fiscal year, with the expenses we're going to be making that have been approved, that is, I think, a replacement of a loader and several trucks, we are going to have a balance of $205,000 in that fund. With this purchase, we would probably have now a balance of $185,000. But the money is there, and that's where it's taken from. Always taken from is the surplus, and there is sufficient surplus now or even next year. But it really won't make that much difference.
Councilmember Mulvaney.
Sure.
Councilmember Mulvaney.
Mike, just my only concern, Mr. Price is always weighing out, trying to make a decision when I don't understand the budget. And I don't know how many others are in that same position. And I spoke to you, once earlier. I said, what I'd really like to have is a workshop because I really would like to go through the budget. We talked about a surplus. We talked about buying a $400,000 plus fire truck, and we asked, well, what will that do to the surplus? And I think the answer was going to lower it from 34 to 32%. It didn't have any meaning for me, and so.
I looked it up for you, by the way.
Well, thank you. But please understand, somehow or another, always making these decisions based on not understanding 5-year budget, so it makes it tough for me to see through these decisions.
I believe that's what I just did when I answered the question about this year's budget or next year's budget. Being that this is an enterprise fund, that we work on profit, or in our case, it's called surplus. Our surplus is dollars figured as of June 30th of 2006. By making $30,000 one-year payment, it's going to lower it by $30,000, so it's going to bring it to $185 if my arithmetic is correct. And that, the fact of it is that there should be more. In my estimation, a lot more. And I am going to work on that with this council to make sure that in the future we are going to get there. Now, fire trucks are a general fund item, not an enterprise fund. That's basically property taxes and the like, including revenue sharing and the like. This year, we anticipate at the end of this year to have a $2.3 million surplus. Eric, am I correct on that? Okay. $2.3 million budget. Surplus. Is that enough? You know, that's one of those things that when we look at those kinds of things, we have insurance. What do we have insurance for? If the worst catastrophe is, we're going to have a lot of insurance coverage. Will it cover everything? Will it cover streets? And no. But we have $2.3 million. We have a general fund of approximately $5.5 to $6 million, getting close to $6 million. So we have, when that talk about the 38% and 34% is talking about the percentage of the budget is going to be absorbed by, say, a fire truck purchase. So if it goes from 38 to 34, that's what I think Eric was referring to, was the surplus versus the overall general fund. The overall general fund. Is that correct, Eric?
I think if he's referring to the meeting when we talked about the fire truck, we're looking at available fund balance based on the rules the way they are now, and basically what the available fund balance and the suggested amounts have to do with is how many months you can fund operations, and that's when you say 20%, it's like 2.5 months. If you look at that, and that's really when giving you a recommended fund balance, that's how you look at that. Ours is healthy at this point, and as we stated at that meeting, and like I'm saying, there's a healthy fund balance there. But as we utilize our street program to its fullest, it'll go down for the same reasons it went up. And our street program drives it one way or the other. And for some time, they utilized some provisions that allowed it to increase. And they also found some grants that also allowed it to increase, and some of those things that may not be there will draw on it. But yes, there is a healthy fund balance there.
I would be, Councilmember Mulvaney, I would be glad to, if the council, for votes, hold a workshop session at some point down the road to just review budget and to really explain. Maybe that's part of it. We need an explanation. An enterprise fund versus a property tax fund versus Act 51 monies. All of those things are a little complicated unless you know what it is. And I'd be glad to spend time with the council to answer your questions and give you an overview.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? Councilmember Ferris?
I am still concerned because the reason we have a healthy fund balance is because we have been fiscally conservative. And this is an unplanned expense, and it is 25,000. We're not including the interest on it, and we're also on a 10-year time frame. So, do we have additions to that fund? We don't know that. That's why I'm concerned. Thank you.
Mr. Price, I would like to jump in here and clarify the SAR and your detailed analysis of it. If I understand this, the way I read this, what you're asking for in the motion tonight is approval from the council to proceed in the process to purchase a street sweeper at your estimating will cost from $225,000 to $280,000. Because you state towards your next to last paragraph that once you and staff have made that decision and narrowed it down to a particular piece of equipment, which will then have a model and price attached to it, then you will be coming back to the council to request another motion to authorize the purchase, at which point then
we'll know
we
what
would...
the interest cost is. And
Correct.
I'm hoping to get a municipal, basically a municipal bond rate on this purchase.
Yes.
So we're looking at maybe 2.5%.
So there's no budget amending, there's no cash transfers, anything at this point. This is merely a motion to approve the process to research and review. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood what I was reading. That's the way I took that, and thought a clarification might help. Because the concern I have with this particular piece of equipment, and council's passed, I know there's been some emergency repairs, some tank repairs, welding, leaving me with a distinct impression that this piece of equipment is living on borrowed time. With your analysis of man hours and efficiency, that just further supports that issue for me.
It costs us more to keep it going.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve beginning the process to research and review?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just also have a question for the acting city administrator. I know it's nearly impossible to foresee emergency expenses that may have to come out of the motor vehicle pool, but to the best of your knowledge and maybe looking into a crystal ball, do you foresee anything else that we might need to consider in the short term that would place an impact on the reserves currently in the motor vehicle pool?
No, I do not. Okay. This is the only thing, and as far as the motor vehicle fund, this, along with the budgeted items for this year, I think there's a replacement of a front-end loader and several pickup trucks and those kinds of things that the council would do. That's what would bring it down to $205,000 of surplus. And then, like I say, when we're looking at, I said 30,000 over 10-year basis, or 300,000, but we won't know that until I do get the figures for the interest rate.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? We're missing Councilmember Mulvaney. Master C, how's our system working? Are we audio only? No video? We have video. Nice job. We have no budget. Okay. Councilmember Mulvaney, there were no further questions, so we're calling the vote for all those in favor to authorize the city administrator to proceed in the process of gathering information needed for a new street sweeper, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Regular, excuse me, regular business, item 8C is a discussion of the MML executive search team. And for the benefit now that we have our technology back, I'll just repeat some of what was said during the special meeting. During the special meeting, we had a presentation from the Michigan Municipal League detailing the process of their executive search process. It was originally for the benefit of the ad hoc subcommittee for the purpose of gathering more information on the Michigan Municipal League prior to making a recommendation to City Council, if any. However, it was beneficial with the opportunity we had to have the entire City Council present and relabel it as a special council meeting to allow for quorum and compliance with the Open Meetings Act. So with that said, as unofficial chair of the ad hoc subcommittee, we met briefly after the presentation because for once it didn't take us too long to discuss what we had researched. We are in complete unanimous consensus to recommend to the council as a whole that the council utilize the executive search team services of the Michigan Municipal League, let's say MML, for the purpose of securing a new permanent city administrator. So, Councilman Mulvaney, do you have any comments from our process?
Well, only to say that we took what I think was due diligent. We met. We got some assistance and help from both the Human Resources Director and Mr. Price, and we outlined what we thought that we needed. I think the mayor outlined very professionally what he called 3 techniques for recruiting a city administrator, and I think they will be available to everybody in a minute. And I find that with the presentation today that we have met our objective of a direction that we feel is sound and most reasonable in cost. And that I'd also like to say that the options were not very attractive. As we looked at our list that had been put together for us carefully of other firms that are doing this across the country, they were almost all of them located in California, one in Oregon, one in Indiana. And number one, saw that as being very expensive to work with a firm of that distance. We would have to pay for their airfare to come in. We'd have to pay for their lodging while they're here. And we had no way of being able to determine what their qualifications were. So I see that I just feel very comfortable, especially after the presentation, that the Municipal League can do this job for us at a very reasonable price and meet all the objectives that the ad hoc committee laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mulvaney. Councilmember Bruno, do you have any comments to add on our process?
Certainly. When we first started talking about this, through my obvious dealings with Pat over the years, one of the first organizations that came to my mind was the ICMA. And when we contacted, I did some internet looking on my own on the ICMA, and lo and behold, when you started looking what was available in our area, their reference was always to contact the Michigan Municipal League. So when I read that, and after hearing what Kathy presented to us tonight, Kathy presented to us tonight, I feel very comfortable with what they have given us, that I think it would suit our needs very well at a price that's very affordable. If we end up having to have other services, it seems like a negotiated price would be very reasonable. I just think that for us, it is really the way to go because it's a local firm. They're not that far away. We cut down on travel time, and they are willing to work with us. So I guess I would ask the rest of the council to support the idea of entering into a contract with the Michigan Municipal League to do our search. And I guess at that point, I'll even go so far as to make a motion to that effect that we contract with the Municipal League hopefully we'll get a second and we can have a discussion on it and move forward rather than a lot of talk.
Can you hold your motion just for a moment? Just before we accept the Councilmember Bruno's motion, I wanted a chance to just add my final comments to the process. Receiving a proposal that came fairly in advance of the meeting. It's something that we did not ask for, but the Michigan Municipal League, in their thorough nature, prepared the 8-page proposal that I emailed around 2 o'clock today to everybody, and then also have available in printed form for the meeting. Having taken the time to go over that, there were several points that stuck out to me among all of the things that were mentioned, and in no particular order. It was impressive that they're going to be able to meet the 20-day timeline. That was spelled out in a week-by-week schedule with what's done during that weekly period. And early on, at the very beginning of the process, they will meet with department heads from city staff, and that was important. Department heads had the opportunity for a sit-down meeting to share their expectations and concerns and preferences for who may ultimately end up being their supervisor. Also, the cost involved seemed nominal. We had anticipated possibly spending more for this process than we were saving by having a full-time permanent city administrator for this process. It does not look like that will be the case. We should save some money in the process, which is always important to me. And lastly, and regrettably, and admittedly, our unique skill set on council, although vast and varied, may not completely include all the processes that should be required for selecting and recruiting a city administrator. So this takes all but the oversight out of our hands and puts it in the hands of a professional organization. And those were the high points for me. But before we return to Councilmember Bruno's motion, I would also like to offer Mr. Price an opportunity to comment on his knowledge and expertise in this area, as well as what we've learned tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, if we could go back a little bit to what she said. She took the words right out of my mouth that, in fact, the appointment of the chief administrative officer for the city of Mason is maybe and perhaps the most important thing you'll do while you're serving the public as a city council member. The three types of ways to approach this is, in a nutshell, where the city council does it all. Which stresses the council, it stresses the staff. I believe I was hired. Mr. Bruno, I believe you were on the council at the time. Yes. I believe that was done by the council. Is that correct? Yes. And then after I left, we had a consultant come in, and he did the legwork and made recommendations to the city council. And the other part of it is a combination of both, where the council does certain things, the consultant does certain things, and I find that to be the worst of all, because who's going to be responsible for something missed? And what we need is a coordinated approach. I believe that this is again a very important task. I would think that the council would want to consider a professional search team who are familiar with city managers. In fact, in this case, it would be apparently conducted by a former city manager of Mount Pleasant, who had been there for 25 years. So if anybody should know the breed or the type of cat they're looking for, it's another manager. So I think that the MML would meet all of the requirements. And if I could, I'd just like to just share with you what I believe are the core items of a city manager and that they are committed to. And if I read it, and it's not very long, but they serve as stewards of representative democracy, practicing the highest standards of honesty and integrity in local governance, as expressed through ICMA's Code of Ethics, building sustainable communities as a core responsibility, lifelong learning and professional development, financial integrity and responsibility for management of the community, and implementing best management practices. Given those tasks, I believe that it's incumbent upon us to get the very best to find and search out and get somebody who meets those criteria. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Price. I would now recognize Councilmember Bruno's motion to, would you mind restating that, Councilmember Bruno?
That I would move that we contract with the Michigan Municipal League to conduct an executive search for our city administrator.
Support.
The motion's been made and seconded to contract with the Michigan Municipal League to perform the search process and secure a permanent city administrator. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Clark.
I have a number of questions and maybe a couple of comments. First of all, for the ad hoc committee, how many other interviews did you do of consultants or firms?
This was the only one in Michigan that was available.
How many other presentations did you participate in?
Presentation 0. I have the reference material in this file that you're welcome to take a look at of what we're aware of. These are the companies that do this that are in this yellow spreadsheet. So these, if you take a look at it, as Councilmember Mulvaney said, Pennsylvania, California, Minnesota, Oregon, Texas, Ohio, and the list goes on. But this is all available to anybody that wants to take a look at it, the information that we use to narrow this down.
So you didn't participate in any other presentations?
Negative.
How many other municipalities did you check with to see how that MML has done searches for that, to see what kind of feedback you got from those particular councils and those particular municipalities?
Other than what they have provided for us, which we have no reason to doubt as their clients, they included that list on the proposal on page 7. There are 4 columns of Michigan municipal agencies that they have done this work for.
Yep. And how many of them did the ad hoc committee speak with?
Of the cities?
Yes.
I don't believe that we talked to any of them.
Comments. Some of the high points that were raised was about the search people from MML meeting with all the department heads. That was important to you. I've been through this once before, and that was a high priority, and I believe it's a high priority for any consultant that's been doing any kind of searches for any time period, as well as all the oversight would be handled by any consultant that you hire. The last time the City of Mason conducted a search, the City Council at that time went with a consultant that had no experience in a municipal search and came in with an attitude that it was going to do the best job that he possibly could, and because of that, he went outside of conventional methods and advertised in places and did things that I don't think anybody else would have thought to do, because he was going to be that thorough. So I wouldn't discount the fact that just because someone has no experience necessarily in a municipal search, that they don't have the ability to conduct one and do one more thoroughly than anybody else. On the surface, I guess I don't have a problem with MML, except that we don't have anything to compare it to. You have not interviewed any other consultants, so you don't know that the price is good or bad or whatever. You just said that the $15,000 seems to be reasonable. What I read into that was when the young lady was giving her presentation, that 15,000 assures us at least 4 visits. I was pretty disappointed in that. I know when we hired a consultant to do it the last time, he was here at least once every couple of weeks, if not more, doing interviews with staff, talking with people from the community, digging into all the history of the town. Very, very thorough. So I was a little disappointed and thought that I would expect a little bit more for the 15,000 other than just 4 visits. I also am a little concerned about MML so far as their contacts and their methods of search. I think that they're probably very good and very well connected within the state of Michigan, but I think she said it right off the top that a city with the status of Mason deserves to do a national search, and I think that their national search is going to be very limited. My concern is that we get the very best candidate that we can, and that person may or may not be located in Michigan, but if we don't look under every stone, then we won't know that for sure. So I have a number of concerns about this motion. I think that it sounds to me like we're being intimidated by a time frame, so we're just going to go with the first person that comes in the door. I don't think that we've done enough homework to be even remotely prepared to make any kind of decision on a consultant, especially when we don't have anything to compare it to. So for that reason, I would encourage the council to at least get back together and talk to a few other people and find out just exactly what is available out there outside of the yellow paper that you have there. Make some phone calls, talk to some consultants, and get some recommendations from people that are in this field, and see what we can turn up.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark, for your comments. Points are well taken. I'll attempt to address what I've got notes for. If I walk you through the process that we used, we started with the International City Managers Association, the ICMA, an outfit that has been applauded throughout portions of the evening already. Much of what we were able to do did not require a personal contact with anybody because the information is available online and through other electronic resources. One of the things that we quickly learned about the ICMA is that they do not have a presence in Michigan at all, and so they deferred to the MML, Michigan Municipal League, an agency that Mason, as a member community for a large number of years, we are familiar with. We were comfortable with them, and that's what steered us in that direction to begin the research on there. And they're more local and accessible. And as you can see, we're quite receptive to our inquiries and provided all the information and then some that we were hoping to get. And you're correct. We're also very mindful of the tight timeline we are on, because due to the appointment that was selected for acting city administrator, we don't have an open-ended contract. It's a finite contract that will likely end and need an extension prior to the 120-day MML timeline if that clock was to start ticking tonight. So with that in mind, we were on a mission to fast-track this, yet be efficient and do the due diligence that we can, and go with the available resources that we could identify and present back to you. So we, as a subcommittee, were very comfortable with the presentation. And granted, although had we had the luxury of an unlimited time or even a much longer limited time to go out and maybe make some road trips and do some research, we could have turned up more information that likely would have pointed, in our opinion, back to the end as it stands. I hope that helps your concerns somewhat.
Mr. Mayor, what what that does is this points out that we're in a hurry. We're going to pick the first person comes through the door. If you're going to do this, you want to do it right and get it right the first time. And if you're willing to take a chance on something that you don't have anything to compare it with, then I guess you go ahead. But in order to make any kind of an informed decision, you have to have information. And reading something off a spreadsheet, if you would have probably called one of the people from ICMA, they may have even given, who knows, they may have given you a recommendation of somebody in this area that does this kind of thing, and you could have spoken with them. But like I said, I'm just not comfortable with taking the first person that comes through the door without knowing what else is out there. And I know there are other firms and other people in this area that do this kind of work. And if I remember correctly, I think that the Mayor Pro Tem came in at one point with a couple from a previous consultant that we used here and one other one. So they're there, but we don't have anything to compare it with. And now you just want to say, okay, well, this first one in, and we're comfortable with this, so we're just going to go. I don't know what to compare it to. I don't know what else is available. It would seem to me that $15,000 would assure me at least more than 4 visits from the people that are supposed to be heading this search.
Councilmember Mulvaney.
Well, under the presumption that it seemed like we might want to hire a firm, and I think that was clear within the ad hoc committee, that we wanted to hire a firm that had some experience with government affairs officials. Well, that being the case, I don't want to be facetious, but if you want to, for airfare to California, $59 a day per diem for meals, I'll go to California and interview 5 or 6 of them and get you a comparison. While I'm out there, I might as well go to Yosemite and enjoy a week. But I don't think you'd call that due diligence.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Clark.
It never ceases to amaze me that we have to go to the extreme. You know, in this day of communication with Skype and emails and telephones, a couple of phone calls probably would have given you all of the information you needed, or at least pointed you in a direction to find the information that you needed, and we didn't even do that. So that's just my concern.
And I'll make one more comment. Ms. Rebels did give me one note of one firm that was a local firm in Lansing that I did call with the interest of finding out what kind of searches they did. And that was 10 o'clock in the morning, and she wanted to buy me lunch at noon. And when I said I was busy, she wanted to buy me lunch the next day. And I hung up because I said, that's not due diligence. I'm out of here. And so I'm not gonna submit to that kind of stuff. I have no capability to decide for you what truly is another capable firm to do this. And so that's not insane, Mr. Clark.
Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Grosha.
MML may very well be the best executive search firm we could hire, but I don't have enough information to make that decision. So I need something to compare it to. Does that make it clear where my concern is? It very well could be. I just don't have any idea.
I would just like to interject this time for factual. My understanding is that the subcommittee sought out the ICMA, which is proper because it is the professional association for city managers, and asked that they provide the city with only those that they considered qualified search teams for city managers. And the list was received by the subcommittee. And again, it came down to only one from the state of Michigan, and that is the MML. So the question is, okay, we look to the next closest state, or Indiana, or Ohio, and hopefully something like that. That is something they can do. The question became is, how much are we willing to pay for these kinds of transportation costs?
Thank you, Mr. Price. It's Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to contribute briefly to the discussion. I did a little bit of research on my own, and I found that I've arrived at the same conclusion as the ad hoc committee. Basically, for my own benefit, after Mr. Colburn shared publicly that he was taking another position, I began doing some research on my own. I looked at the ICMA organization as the main credentialing organization of city administrators, and also looked at the MML. And with regard to a firm that specializes in working with municipalities for an executive search, it seemed that the Municipal League in Michigan was the best option for us to look at. And that's not to say that there aren't individual people, such as Mr. Blockett, who performed the search the last time for the city, but seeking a specific firm that has experience and a track record with working with municipalities, I was convinced that the Municipal League would be the option to go. That being said, just for my own benefit, I took it upon myself to have a conversation with Mr. Blockett. Unfortunately, he's retired. He shared with me at the time that there was an individual that performed a search for the Lansing Board of Water and Light auditor, but that particular person was not experienced in performing executive searches for municipalities and for cities. And so while, and I don't recall the name at this moment, but while that was a name that he shared with me, he did express the caveat that that particular person was not experienced with the type of work that we might be looking for. Outside of that, I think the only other name that I came across in conversations with others was a gentleman by the name of Jerry Richards, who's a retired city administrator. And I believe, it was not a direct conversation that I had, but I believe a conversation I think that Mr. Colburn might have had at that time indicated that he was not available at the time for us. And so I do think that we probably, we could probably debate this for months and, invite several individuals to come in. But for me personally, after doing a little bit of research and also speaking with some individuals in the Municipal League, I feel personally convinced that the league will do a good job and that they will provide us the service that we need and want for this particular executive search. And so I'm comfortable moving forward at this point, not necessarily feeling burdened by a time frame, but recognizing that we do want to move forward, make sure that we get our profile out there and get applicants and that sort of thing. And I think that us as a council, we can make sure throughout the process that we are holding the Municipal League to the type of standards that we would expect for the services that we are contracting with. So, in that regard, I definitely respect the differing viewpoints that have been shared, and I certainly do understand that we could have a few more conversations, but I believe at this point that I am personally satisfied with the proposal from the league, and I would be supportive of the motion that it's on the floor. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Is it your opinion that the MML will cast the absolute widest net? Because that's what's important to me.
It's the opinion of the ad hoc subcommittee that they will do best job for us for the cost. It's a balancing act between how much we want to spend and how far we want to go for the consultant process. And knowing that we're in as a primarily a conservative, fiscally conservative community, we felt that the cost was an important factor, as I previously mentioned. So hopefully the answer to that proves to be yes, and we will see. I respect the differing opinions as well, but rest assured that the ad hoc subcommittee, if we felt this was not a proper recommendation for what has been termed one of the most important functions we may ever perform as part of this particular council, that we would have moved on and continued the search.
Would they do a better job for twice the price?
That's not always the case, but we could ask.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to offer this. Whether it's Mr. Lockett, the MML, Anderson and Associates of California, they're going to advertise in the ICMA newsletter. That goes to every city manager, every assistant city manager in the country. So no matter who's hired, the national search will take place through the ICMA bi-weekly newsletter. Simple as that. No better. You can't do better. You just can't do better than that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just to add to what Mr. Price has stated, one of the things that I like is that the league will do, they call them passive calls. And so they have lists of managers and assistant city managers, not only in Michigan, but through the other municipal leagues in other states. They have those contacts through the ICMA. They have regional contacts. And they will call individuals that meet the profile for our community and say, hey, you may not have seen this posting, but we think that it's something that you might be interested in, or it might be your skill set at this point in your career. And to me, some of those cold calls can actually be more beneficial than the person that sees that announcement on the job site. So I think we will get a diversity of candidates, both from the ICMA newsletter, from the passive calls, and also they're going to be engaging in social media interactions as well for advertising the positions. I think that my hope and my belief is that we will get a diversity of candidates through all of those means.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for comments and also for checking up on the ad hoc subcommittee. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to contract with Michigan Municipal League for the executive search services signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Unfinished business. Councilmember Bruno.
None.
Councilmember Clark.
None.
Councilmember Ferris.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem.
None.
Councilmember Mulvaney.
None.
Councilmember Drosha.
No unfinished business.
New business. Councilmember Bruno.
None.
Councilmember Clark.
None.
Councilmember Ferris.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I have none.
Councilmember Mulvaney.
None.
Councilmember Drosha.
Yes. Now that we've hired the MML to do our search, I believe it's time to dissolve the ad hoc committee, so I would move to do that at this time.
Second the motion for discussion purposes.
Motion's been made and seconded to dissolve the spirited and esteemed ad hoc subcommittee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, Councilmember Rocha. Correspondence. In your packet, you have the monthly revenue and expenditure report, as well as the quarterly investment report for the period ending June 30th, 2015 fiscal year. Liaison reports. Tree Commission. Councilmember Ferris.
There's still time to get a tree for the sesquicentennial The form is online or at the city clerk's office or, of course, at the Chamber of Commerce, $150. And you can put it to Nutri in Mason. Thank you.
Is it safe to assume the deadline on that is December 31st or the 150th tree?
Actually, it's safe to assume that mid-August is the best time if you want to get it planted this
This year.
fall. Yes.
Okay. Traffic Commission, Councilmember Drosha.
Traffic's still flowing. We haven't met yet.
Planning Commission, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Planning Commission met last week on July 14th. We had 2 items of regular business, held a public hearing, and also approved a preliminary and final site plan and special use permit to construct a 600 square foot building addition to the existing First Presbyterian Church located at 131 East Maple. That was approved unanimously, and they are going to be building a lovely addition to the church that will also add to their accessibility. We also approved a preliminary and final site plan for the construction of a 4,000 square foot salt and storage building on 300 East Kip Road. That was also unanimously approved, and there was not a public hearing needed for that particular item. With regard to our 2 subcommittees that are currently underway, the Medical Marijuana Ordinance Subcommittee is currently moving forward with some recommendations on what changes to our ordinance might be recommended. I will say that the city attorney has shared a memorandum with the Planning Commission and with that subcommittee, basically saying that our enforcement mechanisms, or at least our regulating mechanisms with regard to school zones, even that is fairly limited. So the committee is going to be deciphering that a little bit more, and I believe they will even share that memo with the city council. Or I can share it if anyone is interested. But they're going to decipher that and also look at what the options are for regulating the use of home care, home care providers, understanding that dispensaries is not permitted currently under the law. The other subcommittee is the Sub-Area Planning Committee. You may recall at an earlier meeting that committee was going to engage over the summer with a notice of plan and some public input on both how we might further develop the Cedar Street interchange as well as the Kip Road interchange down to the airport, and have those as amendments to our master plan. That committee's activity is going to be put on hold while the subcommittee on medicinal marijuana is continuing their work as to alleviate the staff from having to divert the resources, and the most immediate concern right now, of course, would be the medical marijuana and the timeline with our existing moratorium. And once that work is completed, the subcommittee on our master plan will pick up their work and begin the amendment process in earnest. With that, there was no other official business, and we will meet next month.
Thank you. Historic District Commission, Councilmember Manning. Thank you. And the BDA will meet in September. That's the administrator's report. Councilmember reports this evening. Mayor Pro Tem.
Very briefly, there had been some public notification that the Mason 150 committee was going to have an information session about the time capsule, and that was originally scheduled for this Wednesday at the Historical Society. That meeting is being postponed to a date yet to be determined, but just to clarify, there will not be a meeting this week, and we will schedule another meeting to discuss our plans for the time capsule as well as the rest of the year's activities. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Administrator reports. Mr. Price.
Yes, for the sake of transparency, I indicated on the agenda that I could provide a report with citizens concerning personnel, wages and salaries. And unfortunately, what is confidential is we were
But anyway, I believe the council has received those reports from me. And as far as being the regular, I did make an order change on East Maple, and I'm even surprised that I had to do that because as long as they knew the sanitary sewer was going down Maple Street, why didn't they include hooking up the main court to get rid of the lift station? So anyway, it's better caught later than never, but in the meantime, right now, all the plans have been submitted to MPQ for approval. As soon as we get approval back, they will finish that job. And by the way, I don't know if the $25,000 is based on the estimated cost based on the contract costs themselves. So for restoration, what have you, we took it right from their contract. So the $25,000 should be no more than $25,000. But it could be less. Kip Road construction, just to let you all know that Kip Road is going to be under the knife pretty soon, and there's going to be from time to time closures on Kip Road, and it's going to be on our website. I believe it already has put on to try to advise the public as to the best route on any given time. I'm sure either Jefferson is going to be open or Cedar is going to be open, but they're not going to be closed at the same time, I would think. At least that would be my hope. Anyway, the last item I did put before the council tonight, we have some good news. That there was a one-time Public Act 84 of 2015 included a one-time funding of $260,478,900, of which, under the Public Act 51, that's where we get our revenue from the state of Michigan for road improvements, road maintenance. We're getting a total of $82,272.12, and that'll be split up over quarterly. The first 3 quarters will happen in this fiscal year, and we'll go into the surplus. And in the, I believe it's August of next year, so that first quarter there will also be put into either the major or local fund surplus. So anyway, a bit of good news. We didn't anticipate that.
Mr. Price,
And that's all I have.
are there any questions for the administrator?
Mr. Mayor.
Just 1 second. John. Councilmember Clark.
I didn't have a question specifically, but I did want to thank Mr. Price for addressing the issues that were in your report under the confidential. I think that there have been members of this council for a long time that have been aware of the fact that there were some deficiencies concerning personnel, and you stepped up to the plate and did things the right way and have made things right. We've always taken a great deal of pride in this community of taking care of our employees, and I think you've gone a long ways to putting us back on the right track, and I personally appreciate that because I've agreed that those deficiencies existed and needed to be addressed, so I'm glad to see you did that. So thank you very much for doing that.
I thank you very much for that. Thank you.
And I'd second that, Pat.
Anything else for the administrator? We are adjourned. So you have new information coming.